Welcome to the fourth of the Print and Play videos. This video is an add-on to the normal Print and Play podcast, which you can find on the web at printandplay.co.uk. In this video, I'm going to take you through the process I went through when making my copy of Cheese Chasers. When you download the game, there are 4 PDFs. One contains the rules, which you can see here printed out in the background. 2 contain the game tiles, which again you can see here printed on light card. And the 4th contains the tile backs, which I didn't bother with when I was making the game. Once you've printed out the components, obviously the first thing you have to do is trim them off, and I had to trim round the tiles and trim round the rules booklet. My next step was to cut the backing card into the appropriate size. As you can see here, what I've done is laid down the tile fronts on top of my cardboard base, and I've drawn a pencil line around that, and I'm just going to cut that out roughly. The cardboard I'm using here is so thick that I can't actually use a pair of scissors to do it. I have to use a sharp knife. In this case, I'm using one of my scalpels. You might also note at this point that I have a tiny cutting mat, which is much smaller than the piece of cardboard I was cutting out, so I had to be extremely careful that I didn't cut the table surface underneath when I was doing this. To stick the card fronts onto the card backing, I'll be using this 3M craft mount. I've tried a few different spray glues, and this one turns out for me to be the best. You can see here that the card backing I'll be using for the tiles is quite thick. The pencil is there for scale. It's about 2.5 to 3 millimeters. It gives you a good thick tile. Using this weight of card gives you a number of advantages. One of them is that your tiles last longer without getting bent, and the second one is that kids can handle them a lot easier. And as you can see from the graphics, this game will appeal to children. In this next picture, you can see where I've actually mounted the tiles. The mounting process was very quick. Once the card was cut out, I took it outside, I ran the spray can twice over the cardboard, and then stuck down the card fronts. Now I had to burnish them, that is, push them down firmly and push very carefully around the edges so that every edge was stuck down securely and wouldn't peel off later. While I was waiting for that to dry, I got to work on the booklet. In this case, the booklet is a single A4 sheet that you make one cut on, and then you can fold into this little booklet. But it does leave you a couple of open edges. And as you can see here, I've used a simple glue stick to glue down those edges so that the booklet doesn't flap and tear too easily. Once all the glue was dry, I moved on to cutting out. Now, as I said earlier, this card is too thick for scissors, and here you can see where I've had one of my accidents. This seems to happen almost every time I make a game and have to use a craft knife to cut. What happens is I've got my ruler against the cardboard, I'm pushing down on that very firmly, I'm dragging the knife through the card, and then for some reason, maybe it's my age, it just wanders away from the ruler, and here you can see it's made a slit across 2 tiles. Now I'm happy to leave that on there for now, because it doesn't actually affect the gameplay. But if I'd had card backs, for instance, that would have made them immediately identifiable, and I would have had to go through the whole process of making this section again. So here I am halfway through all the cutting process. It hurt. There's a lot of cutting on some very thick card, and it probably takes me about 20 or 30 passes with the knife to get through one layer of card. So, as you can see, that's an awful lot of cuts here. And here's the finished game. I've put it in front of a can of Pepsi so you can see the scale. Once you pile up those tiles, you can see how thick they are. And of course, you can see that the little booklet is very small as well. Now the game's ready to play, I need something to store it in. I happen to have an old Killer Bunnies expansion box around, so this game is going to go into there. I'm going to use Photoshop or PaintShop Pro to knock up a nice cover to go on top of that, and I'll sellotape that into place. And that's it. The game's done. If you like the look of this game, let me remind you that it is free. Simply come by the printandplay.co.uk website, and from there you'll find a link to where you can download this game from its home site. Thanks for watching.